It's time for a playoff push as we hit week 14 of the 2018 NFL season. Last week in my picks, week 13, 11-5. Doing pretty decently these last 2 weeks. Hopefully I can have a decent week for the third week in a row. Also last week, 3-1 in picks against the spread. I feel like I could have gone 4-0, but Cam Newton, he threw 4 interceptions, and the Panthers could not beat the Buccaneers by 3.5, let alone couldn't get the victory at all. So 3-1, that's still a good record against the spread, as like I've been saying repeatedly ever since I started off this hot streak. A slow start to the season, but as the weeks go on, I start picking up my stride. I'm pulling out these 3-1s. I even pulled out a 4-0 a couple weeks ago. So I'm hoping in my picks against the spread this week, I can go 4-0 this week. And I think I like these picks. So this week, I'm going to have my picks against the spread as well as my regular NFL picks. I'm putting them together. That way, it gets a little bit easier as we're towards the time where it's almost the holiday season and so many of you really don't have the time to watch multiple YouTube videos a week. So I'm kind of saving you some time. So right when I get to a spread pick, I'm going to let you know when it is. So, but there's not one here, as a couple matchups this week, they don't seem watchable or worth picking, but I picked them anyway. So we're going to start with the Thursday night football game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. And I'm going to pick the Tennessee Titans. I feel like the Titans, they still have something to play for, while the Jaguars don't. It's kind of, the Jaguars, they did get a 6-0 victory against the Colts. Is their defense back? Just off allowing no points against the Colts. And you could argue and say that they are, but it's kind of hard to predict a trend in the NFL. You could say that a team is doing well all you want, but you're only as good as you are the next game. And I don't think the Jaguars are going to be as good in this next game. I like the Titans. Next, the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. We're really not off to a good start in picking watchable games. These first 2 games right here are watchable, so I'm going to quickly get them out of the way. I'm going to pick the Bills because I think going down the line, both these teams, they have potential. Sam Darnold has potential with the Jets, and Josh Allen has demonstrated the last couple of weeks that he has potential with the Bills. I think the Bills have their franchise quarterback in Josh Allen. It's been evident. He's been doing great running the football lately. However, he just needs a team around him. And I think the Bills, they get him a much-earned win. The Bills may not be going to the playoffs, but they can build off these last couple of weeks in the season to build momentum for the offseason, the draft, and ultimately in 2019. I like the Bills. I think Josh Allen has the best game of the season so far. I think Josh Allen's going to get better this week. I'm taking Buffalo. Next, we have the Carolina Panthers and the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Browns, they had a 2-game winning streak, but they ultimately came back to reality against the Texans. And the Panthers, they are skidding down a steep hill. But I think the Panthers, they get this much needed win. I think if the Panthers don't get this win, I feel like they should just start tanking, because right now, they're on a losing streak. They've lost now 4 games in a row. And I think Cam Newton redeems himself in this one, goes into the dog pound, and he puts up 4 touchdown passes on these Cleveland Browns. I'm taking Carolina to get back on the winning track. Next, we have the Atlanta Falcons versus the Green Bay Packers. Once the season started, this matchup, it seemed like it was going to be an interesting one. It was going to be, this was originally supposed to be the Monday Night Football game, but joint scheduling and flex scheduling, it's now applicable in the NFL. So this was originally the Monday Night Football game, but since both teams, they're pretty much eliminated from playoff contention, it's now being pushed back to a 1 o'clock Eastern game. And I'm going to pick the Packers because very quickly I want to address that the Packers did indeed fire Mike McCarthy. They've parted ways. They mutually parted ways with him after the game against the Cardinals, where the Packers had a chance to tie the game and send it to overtime, but Mason Crosby missed the field goal. There's just been so much that's been going wrong with the Packers these last 2 seasons. It just seems like a team, from the NFC, when they go to a championship game, like the NFC title game, and they lose, like, it just seems to have impact. It happened with the Falcons back in 2012, 2013. The next couple seasons were a huge struggle. Then they had one good season. Then they had an alright season. And now it's just kind of coming downhill. And the Vikings losing the NFC Championship game. They have had their inconsistencies this season. And we'll get to them later. But I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers, as I think that they are going to want to play well for this interim head coach. And right now it's going to be offensive coordinator Joe Philbin. And I think they want to get the win. It seems as if they say that Aaron Rodgers was a huge problem with this Packers team, as there was friction going on. But I think the Packers win this game, because I think Aaron Rodgers, he sees this as a new start. Even though teams that aren't in playoff contention, and it would behoove them to tank, that's not necessarily the case, because you can either tank and go for a high draft pick, or you can just try to get some wins late in the season, build some momentum. Kind of like what the 49ers did last season by putting in Jimmy Garoppolo when they had nothing to lose, because they had nothing to lose. They were already missing the playoffs. They just had a lot to gain. And they pulled off win after win after win, including upsetting the Jaguars on Christmas Eve last year. Anyway, to get back on track, I'm taking the Packers. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is one of the spread picks this week. Lamar Jackson is 3-0 at the helm for the Ravens. The Ravens are on a 3-game winning streak. Ever since it was announced that the Ravens are expected to part ways with John Harbaugh at the end of the season, the Ravens have just pulled 3 wins in a row. This is the week where we get to see how talented Lamar Jackson is right now and how good this Ravens team can be moving forward. The Ravens had a strong start to the season, but losing to the Saints, that is what kind of started the trend of the Ravens going downhill, with Justin Tucker missing an extra point to tie the game. And that kind of started off a bad trend for the Ravens. But starting Lamar Jackson, it's gotten the Ravens back in the right direction. But we're going to have to see how good this Ravens team can be going up against the Kansas City Chiefs with one of, if not the most explosive offense in the NFL. With Pat Mahomes, he has taken the NFL by storm. He's thrown for 40 touchdown passes already this season, and he can easily get to 50, maybe even 55. But I'm going to pick the Chiefs, and I'm going to pick them to cover the 6.5. So Kansas City Chiefs minus 6.5. So that's my first pick against the spread. Next, we have the New England Patriots versus the Miami Dolphins. And the Patriots are notorious for not doing so well on the road against Miami. And I think it's going to apply here as well. I think the Patriots get the victory, but they're not going to win huge. They're not going to win 34-3. They're not going to put up 50 points. I think it's going to be kind of an average game for the Patriots. I think the Patriots end up winning maybe 27-17. I think the Dolphins stay in the game for long enough, and I think the Patriots, they do get the win at the end. So I think the Patriots win, but the Dolphins will stay in the game for quite a bit. Next, we have the New Orleans Saints versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers pull off the ups against the Saints in Week 1, but this Saints team is a lot different than it was in Week 1. And this Buccaneers team is a lot different now. The Saints are moving up, and the Buccaneers are moving down. And I think the Saints, they recover from last week's Thursday Night Football loss against the Cowboys, where everything just seemed to go wrong for the Saints. Every team's going to have that. Even the Patriots have that once in a while. And that was just the Saints. That was just their one game where it seemed that everything went wrong. But I think they're going to take that anger and use it against this Buccaneers team. I'm liking the Saints and the Saints to cover the 8-point spread. It's my second pick of the week. New Orleans minus 8. Next, we have the New York Giants versus the Washington Redskins. And the Redskins are down to Mark Sanchez at quarterback, as Colt McCoy is now out for the season. So they're down Alex Smith and Colt McCoy, and they're down to Mark Sanchez. And the Giants, they picked up an impressive upset victory over the Chicago Bears. And I think the Giants, they use this momentum. Even though the Giants, they are almost eliminated from the playoffs, the NFC East is kind of self for grabs for them. I think the Giants, they get this victory. I think the Giants, they're not as bad as a team as their record is showing. They've played some close games this season. They could have about maybe 1 or 2 more victories to their record. The Giants have been playing some decent football. It's just been kind of getting wins. They're playing well and losing efforts, but they got to get wins. I think the Giants get a win here, as they are confident from their win against the Bears and going on the road against the Redskins. I like them to get the W here. Next, we have the Indianapolis Colts versus the Houston Texans. The Colts laid a goose egg on the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, while the Texans have continued to pull off wins. This is 9 games in a row now. And I think they make it 10. I think Houston, they are kind of like the Chiefs team from a couple years ago that started off 1-5, but they pull off 11 wins in a row. And I think this is going to kind of be a Texans team that does exactly this. I think the Texans, they get the victory here over Indianapolis, ultimately pulling away in the AFC South. Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are coming off a huge comeback win in the second half last week against the Steelers in Heinz Field. And the Bengals, they are not doing that well. I mean, it's just been a disaster for Cincinnati ever since their Week 2 victory on Thursday Night Football against the Ravens. It just seems that almost everything has gone wrong with this Bengals team. Andy Dalton's out for the season. A.J. Green is now out for the season. Tyler Eifert has been out for the season for a while. And they're down to Jeff Driscoll and Tom Savage at the quarterback position. And I think the Chargers, I think this is going to be almost an easy win for them. I know it's hard to predict an easy win, but with how well the Chargers have been playing this season, it's safe to say that this could be an easy win for them. I'm taking the Chargers. Next are the Denver Broncos and the San Francisco 49ers. The Broncos, they're getting some wins. They're pulling out wins together. The Broncos, they started off pretty well. Then they kind of had a roller coaster. They kind of skidded down, but they're kind of going back up. And I think they extend their winning streak this week against the 49ers. Really not much to it. The 49ers, they're eliminated from playoff contention, so it's either tank or just try to get some momentum for next season. So I'm going to take Denver, because I think that Denver, they still realize they have something to play for. Next are the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. These two teams, it looks like it's going to come down to these two teams for the NFC East. And this game is going to play a huge factor into who is going to control this NFC East after this week. Because the NFC East is still up for grabs. There's still a long way to go. But I'm going to take the Cowboys in this one. I just think that the season changer for the Cowboys was beating the Eagles in Philadelphia. And I think their winning streak continues, and they're coming off a huge win against the Saints. So it's an obvious confidence booster. I'm going to take the Cowboys. Next, we have the Steelers and the Raiders. And this is one of my picks as well. I think the Steelers win. However, the Steelers are known for playing down to their competition. And we saw that again, especially against the Chargers last week when they had a huge lead at halftime and they just let it get away from them. And I think that Oakland, they're not that good of a team this season either. But I think Oakland keeps it within 11. So my third pick against the spread this week, the Oakland Raiders at plus 11. Next are the Detroit Lions and the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals coming off a nice victory against the Packers, even though the Packers aren't doing that well this season. It's kind of still nice because they went on the road in Lambeau and win, which is very hard to do once it gets towards December. And the Lions, they're not as bad as their record shows either. They've lost a couple of close games. And the Cardinals are very known for playing better at home. I think this is a game that gets decided maybe by a last-minute field goal, and I think the Lions will get the victory here. There's really nothing about it. It's one of those games that don't really seem that watchable. It seems that quite a bit of these games don't look watchable. But here's one that is watchable. This is the Sunday Night Football game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Chicago Bears. The NFL's best offense in the Rams going up against what I think is the NFL's best defense in the Chicago Bears. Is Mitchell Trubisky going to be able to play? whether he is or not, as much as it is hard for kind of these West Coast teams like the Rams or even the Chargers, having to play in the Midwest, especially in December when the weather gets colder, I still think the Rams get it done. I think this is going to be a close game from start to finish. It's going to be interesting because something has to give in this game. And Khalil Mack has obviously been a game changer for the Chicago Bears this season. But I think the Rams, they get the win. The Rams may be in the playoffs right now. They may have clinched a playoff spot, but they still got to get that number 1 seed. Because the second they look back, they could end up going on a 2-game losing streak, and the Saints have control of the NFC playoff race. So, people will take their chances in LA, and the last thing you want to do is to get to the Super Bowl is have to go through New Orleans. Because New Orleans at home is a much different team than New Orleans on the road. And teams will take their chances in LA. They just don't want to have to go to New Orleans. They'll take their chances in LA, but they won't go to New Orleans because, well, let's just say that it's very hard to win in New Orleans in general. As it was evident when the Rams played the Saints a few weeks ago. And finally, the Monday Night Football game, the Vikings versus the Seahawks. Both these teams, they are fighting for a wild card spot. They're still in the NFC playoff race. Both these teams have been playing some decent football lately. The Seahawks, they've appeared to just be playing a little bit better than the Vikings. And Kirk Cousins for the Vikings is kind of notorious for not doing that well in games that matter and in prime time. But I think it's kind of up and down. It's very hard to determine how Kirk Cousins will do in a primetime game or against teams that matter. Kirk Cousins is good for putting up numbers against teams that don't matter and just falling under the pressure when it comes to playing playoff caliber teams. And I think it's a pattern. I think this time around, playing the Bears, he fell under the pressure. Playing the Packers in a rivalry game in primetime, he was able to pull it off. Last week against the Patriots, he couldn't pull it off in Gillette Stadium. But this week, Monday Night Football, on the road in Seattle, where it's very tough to play as well for the 12th man, I think he gets it done this week. And I'd like the Vikings to win and beat the 3-point spread. It's my fourth and final pick of the week against the spread is the Minnesota Vikings at +3. So those are my picks of the week. For a review, I've got the Titans, Bills, Panthers, Packers, Chiefs, Patriots, Saints, Giants, Texans, Chargers, Broncos, Cowboys, Steelers, Lions, Rams, and Vikings all win this week. My picks against the spread are Kansas City -6.5, New Orleans -8, Oakland at +11, and Minnesota at +3. So comment your thoughts on my picks down below. Also comment your picks down below as well. And like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.